Hello and welcome to the 8th edition of the very random, low quality and a bit all over the place AutoTalk Weekly Wrap. Again, we are live on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn. Well, LinkedIn on my LinkedIn page. We need a few more people to go and add the AutoTalk page before we can have it on LinkedIn. So if you're watching this, please go to LinkedIn and add AutoTalk to your network, I guess you'd call it. I don't know. Anyway, how is everyone this morning other than shivering? I mean, it's glorified portacoms down on the Croydon's yard, isn't it, Graham? So probably a little nippy?
It's not a portacom. Don't call it that. It actually is a portable building. At least that's technically what it says on the lease. But no, it's a proper building. But come on. But no, I'm commuting about 1.75 hours to work right now from the sunny Manukau Peninsula. And it was a nice balmy 2 degrees when I got into the car this morning. And I felt it.
Yeah. And Matthew, how about you? So you got the nice thick hoodie on there today?
Yeah, the hoodies are well enforced at the moment. They're all in circulation now. I'm bloody freezing. But I'm warmer now having seen your face this morning, Richard. It gives me a real, it gives me a bit of pep.
It's one of those days where we had to take our daughter out to preschool today. And I thought, well, we'll go take the car in the driveway, the press car that's sitting in the driveway. And then I thought, no, hang on. We have a car in a garage, and that garage is going to be warmer than the car outside. So one of those little luxuries of New Zealand life is a lot of us do have the ability to have a car inside. And I was thinking, man, I wish I was rich enough to heat the garage.
Well, increasingly not so if you look at, residential builds around the country where the garage is suddenly becoming a luxury that you pay for. But I was just going to say, from a dealership perspective, in some ways, those winter mornings are quite nice, as it means you don't get a lot of customers until about 9:30 or so when it warms up, which gives you a chance to get stuff done. In the summer, you open the gates, like we open here at 8:30 in the morning, guaranteed 8:31, someone's there at the front, ready to go, service customers, that sort of thing. These wintry mornings, it sometimes gives you that little bit of breathing space that we all need. Otherwise, we just have to start at 7:30. So,
but does it mean a little more work and toweling down wet, dewy cars and in some cases cracking a bit of ice off?
I guess if you're that way inclined, I don't know how many dealerships actually wash their cars first thing in the morning now, Richard, to be honest. We're supposed to be saving water too. Remember that? If you're in Auckland, we're supposed to be saving water.
This is true. We're also supposed to be wearing masks everywhere, but no one seems to really worry about that too much, I think, half the time.
Sorry.
Anyway.
You're safe.
Anyway, right. The joys of digital remoteness. So, big news this week is that the next generation Ford Ranger, and I'm going to use next generation. I always kept on saying new generation, but apparently we've got to say next generation Ford Ranger has landed in New Zealand. And
yay!
And myself, with Matthew towing along with a camera, we're actually the first journalists to have a look at the vehicle in New Zealand. We actually did that a couple of weeks ago, but we were somewhat sworn secrecy until tomorrow, until the local covers came off. And if you want to check out what we did, head over to YouTube, search Fleet Talk Ford Ranger, and we have a video walk around there that's been pretty popular. I think we're knocking up several hundred views in the last overnight, really, and have a good walk around with that. And in fact, I'm going to see, and let's see if we can't get a little bit tricky here. I'm going to see if we can...
Oh no, this is dangerous territory.
Show a little of that video. So you may or may not be able to hear us once I start this. Let's give it a crack. So what's new? Well, a lot. You've got a pretty much entirely new body. You've got a wider track on the vehicle, a longer chassis as well. It's an overall bigger car, despite there being a little bit shared with the old model. Got an all new look, including a new front end, newly sculpted doors, and a bigger, wider tray at the rear. So it really does have a lot more presence than the old model, and the old model was a pretty standout vehicle. Now, one of the issues as utes have got taller and taller is getting access to the tray, but Ford have thought of that on this new Ranger. They've got this big sturdy step here. You can jump up, step in, step round to the back of the tray. It's a great solution. The all-important load tray on this. Yeah, so that's.
I'm back in Texas already.
Hopefully that worked. Hopefully it didn't scare too many people away with that. Now, the annoying thing about that is that I've since learned that potentially, I haven't had this confirmed yet, that step may not make it onto models that arrive here because they've discovered it acts as a giant shovel when you're out forward driving and just picks up great big globs of dirt. But we'll see.
Wow.
We'll wait for
using the
confirmation.
range to go four-wheel driving, honestly.
You could make it a standard for the wild track, and I don't think it would ever be of any issue.
No.
XLT, maybe.
This is a really important model for Ford when you think about it. Right at the point where the clean car discount rebate standard scheme is underway, if you look at the background of that shot, it was either Rangers or Mustangs. It can be really interesting to see if the market picks up with this new Ranger and runs with it at the same sort of numbers they had before. And effectively, it's a big sort of, I can't do it on screen, but a big single finger in the air raised to the powers that be around fuel efficiency and all driving small little economical hatchbacks.
Well, we can add to that, Graham, and that so far we understand 3,000 have been ordered, which I gather is going to take about 6 months to deliver.
Yep.
The majority of those are with the stonking 3-litre turbocharged diesel V6 power stroke, I think they're calling it.
Sign me up.
184 kilowatts and 600 newton meters of torque. It's I mean, look, if people want these vehicles, they're going to buy them. We've said this a dozen times before. But look, if we talk further about, let's talk specifically about this particular vehicle, and you can go and see this car today yourself at the Hutchwilco Boat Show in Auckland. It's quite a big upgrade. I mean, look, there's been some talk about the Ford Ranger being, more of a heavy redo, a heavy update than an all-new vehicle, and there is some truth to that, but only just. I mean, it does look bigger, it feels bigger, it's quite differently sculpted on the outside, it's actually significantly bigger as a vehicle on measurements-wise. I actually think it looks a little bit smaller, and I think that's because of the squared-off edges. Inside is where it's dramatically different. It feels so much roomier inside. Ford, in the current Ranger, kind of costed the drive a little bit. Things were a little bit wraparound and so forth, and that the new one, the dash feels like it's been pushed a little bit further away from the passenger from the front row seats. That new big screen is really dominating.
Accommodate the bigger guys.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and this is a key thing. The seats the seats in the Rangers felt they didn't go particularly low in the old model. They go properly low in this model. It's really cool. A few funny things like the bonnet releases on the left and that kind of stuff, because it's a global car now as opposed to what it was when the last model launched. It's not going to worry you. It's a really cool vehicle. You got to look around, Matthew. What do you think?
Really impressed. Really impressed. And like, I mean, you note some of the knocks on the old Ranger, but like, to be fair, that was probably the market leader for a reason. It was a really good ute. I'm not a huge ute person myself, but I don't really see ute demand falling at all this year. I mean, I guess specifically for the Ranger, probably what I'm waiting for is when the hybrid version comes, whether they're going to manage to get it under 80. It's widely reported that it's probably going to be a plug-in hybrid, not so much a sort of old HEV traditional hybrid. I think that'll be quite interesting. How
with the drivetrain people are expecting for that car basically is a plug-in hybrid with a fairly decent battery in it and the 2.3 petrol turbo. So the question is going to be with that, whether people use it as a PHEV or people use it as a performance option, because I think it's going to be north of 200 kilowatts of output. So, yeah.
Doesn't matter what they do. It's going to sell like fairy bread at a kindergarten gala day.
So that's it's going to be a very popular vehicle, no matter what happens, and deservedly, it's a great truck. It is a great truck. That new model is head and shoulders above anything else that's in the market at the moment, and it's going to be really interesting, I think, more to see what happens from the likes of Toyota and others to match it in the coming future. Toyota will be the one that has to match it. Mitsubishi will just keep on selling good run of the mill mid range utes at value prices and do very, very well. It's Twitter that's probably going to worry the most about the Ford Ranger, because that's who it's really poaching buyers from. Yeah.
Yep.
Now let's move on. Field days, something that Graham and I both love. We've been together at least a few times, and I've gone several times. The National Field Day Society says it's retained 80% of exhibitor sites for the one-off summer event being held from November 30 to December 3, but is inviting other organisations to consider taking part. I like that, inviting other organisations to consider taking part. You mean inviting other organisations to pay five-figure sums to have some land at the field days. The Hyundai and Isuzu Ute brands have confirmed a return to the event in 22, as has Ford, Mitsubishi, Volkswagen and Nissan. Ford would definitely be there with the Ranger, and I'm guessing with Volkswagen that'll be about when their version of the Ranger in Amarok form arrives. Tour New Zealand has yet to make an announcement. They usually don't and then turn up at the last minute. Suzuki has announced it won't be attending, along with Kia, Mercedes-Benz, Mazda and Skoda. I'm not sure those latter brands really have been massively consistent at field days.
The farmers... I was going to say farmer's wife, but no, I'll be more PC and say the farmer's partner has to drive something other than the Ranger, right?
Yeah, well, but the Ranger is so car-like now. Is November a good day? I mean, how do you feel about a field days without the icy morning and the muddy fields, Graham?
Well, it'd certainly make a difference, wouldn't it? And the old tractor pulls are never the same in dry dirt. But I made this point a couple of weeks ago when we talked about it, that it's still in the middle of milking season for a lot of farmers. One of the reasons field days is held in the middle of winter is if you're a farmer, it's when your stock is drying off. It's the mid-range time between drying off your cows if you're milking and calving time. Calving traditionally starts around July and into August, and then lambing season as well. So whether farmers actually have the time to commit to coming from a distance to the field days during November, which is traditionally a pretty busy month, getting organised for the summer season, that remains to be seen. I don't think the timing's optimum, to be fair, and it is field days. It's agriculture for a reason, and I'm a little bit concerned that it's probably catering more to the, should we say, urban aspect of the field days. But hey, look, it is what it is. They've got to do with that particular date, and I think it'll work regardless. But from a farming perspective,
Matthew, you're the urban aspect of this podcast.
Don't put all that on me.
Are you more appealed to a field days in November? I mean, have you ever been to a field days?
I actually haven't, so I'll probably have to pop the cherry this year with your blessing. I was reading the Field Days Society themselves kind of noted that there's been a bit of backlash in their press statement that they issued, which I think is probably good of them. But I mean, for me, I guess being an urbanite means that you can sort of shut yourself off to that entire world, and it doesn't really matter what time of the year, so long as it doesn't get in the way of being able to go to Starbucks and go to the and all that sort of carry on,
Well,
I'm going to give you a top tip, Matthew. Okay, go and buy a pair of red bands now and wear them in, because nothing makes you stand out more than the field days, or as a politician with a brand new shiny pair of red bands that you just know you bought from the warehouse yesterday to come to the farming show. So get them dirty first, or else you'll stand out like a sore thumb.
I already own a pair of red bands, so I'm one step ahead.
Oh, very good. Good.
I don't have a pair of red bands. Mine are like these slightly taller black ones. I just couldn't get the red bands to fit. I think they're a scallop up anyway, but they're to me they're a bit more comfortable. But anyway,
and a stock stick. You've got to have a stock stick too.
A stock stick. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, here's my tips for field days. As a journalist, Matthew, you've got to get into the media centre early. A, to get yourself a good spot, but B, to get whiskey in your instant coffee at about 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning.
A pair of you, honestly. Oh.
And a tip for everyone: if you're there, if you need to buy a ute, I'm not saying what you should buy, but just a pointer is that the LDV Sanyong guys generally have the best lunch. I don't know, they're a bit rural, but those Taupo boys, and they know how to feed. Last year it was a really decent curry buffet. Well, not last year, the last event that I made it to, which was the last one that ran. But just saying. And if they've got the Korean military utes on the display like the last time, then check those out too. I think even Graham was impressed with those.
I'm just listening to you two, and I'm just thinking, your field days are not really.
I haven't said a word. None of this U2 business.
Mate, I saw plenty of farmers tucking into that
trade
curry.
show. Might I make a suggestion here that if you're in the motor vehicle industry, which funnily enough we all are, and if you're watching this, you probably are too, this is the only nationwide, effectively motor show that New Zealand now has. And if you're doing your research on what products are coming to market and where the trends are and what people are actually looking at, this is a really good chance to take a day off the business, take your team, take your management team with you if you like, and some of your chief salespeople, and come and have a look. And get a real taste for what New Zealanders are actually buying and what they're actually thinking, as opposed to the sort of ivory tower thinking. So support it. We don't get a lot of these sort of shows anymore. And from an industry perspective, I think this has become our default motor show. So get in there and have a look.
Yep, and some of the stands are pretty darn impressive, if I may say. Now, moving on to actual car stuff. An Auckland car dealer has auctioned $750,000 worth of classics, because I think some of them are, by definition, not necessarily, on Trade Me. Auckland-based car dealership Sunday Drive is set to host a unique set of classic car and bike barn find auctions later this week, all with no reserve. Going live on Trade Me today, Sunday Drive says the list of vehicles has an overall value of approximately $750,000. Uniquely, the assortment of items are being sold on consignment. Sunday Drive says the owner of the goods recently moved back to America and trusting the dealer to sell each item without reserve. Matthew, what are some of these cars?
It's a bit of a licorice, all sorts. There's a few cool cars there. There's a few interesting cars there. I probably a little bit like Graham, actually. I'm quite interested in the sort of black sheep kind of cars that make an appearance. So there's a couple of Mustangs. There's a couple of other sort of, I guess, traditional American classics. But there's also like a couple of like Cadillac Alentes and like other sort of Malays era American stuff, which it's actually quite an interesting collection. It's all sorts of stuff you wouldn't really think of, and it all looks quite mint. So I'm curious how they go.
Did you say Malays era? Can you explain?
Hush your mouth, child.
What does that mean?
That era of American motoring, where like everything was exactly the same, just with a different body on it, in the sort of 80s and 90s. Graham's shaking his head.
And all these tasty looking V8s that were front wheel drive.
Well, the Mustang was still rear wheel drive.
Oh, the Mustang. Yeah, well, I'm not including the Mustang in that. There's a couple of fastbacks there that should go quite well.
The Camaro Firebird platform through to about 92. And the Cadillac, you mentioned the Cadillac Alente. That was actually a really interesting vehicle from that time. There was some genuinely left field stuff that came out during that perhaps we don't necessarily see because we're sort of so focused on Corvette or Mustang, one of the two. And they were building some stuff by stealth. Don't write it off. Never write it off.
Yeah, I'm just seeing if we can get access to the actual page on screen, but I'm not sure it's going to let me this time.
We'll just sit here and talk amongst ourselves.
Yeah,
I think we're just gonna roll without this. But I'm just looking through. I'm just gonna run some stuff off. We've got a 1998 Peugeot 205 CTI, 97 Jaguar XJC, 51 Ford Victoria, a 99 Cadillac Eldorado 32 valve, some Ford Coupes, some BMW bikes, a few BMW bikes, a few more Jags, Mustang, 67 Ford Mustang. That'll go for some dollars with a 6.4 in it. Which is how many cubes, Graham? That's a...
Oh, I don't know, 6.4 litre. I don't remember now. That'll be
at least 8.
Oh, I found the car I want. A 1983 Chrysler LeBaron 2.2 automatic.
There we are.
That is actually pretty cool.
I tried to buy one of those in America when I was searching for a car in 95. I wanted to buy a LeBaron convertible. And they're actually deceptively hard to try and buy.
There's two of them
in some ways. Yeah.
There's two of them.
Retro cool.
Some Rover TCs, Jag S-Type, another Mustang, a 66 302 with only 20,000 miles on it. 66 convertible 289 with 78,000 miles on it. They're gonna. I can almost feel like they might move a bit more than 750 grand off this auction.
Yeah, so, there's some pluses and some cons in there. I'm not sure how much value some of those cars will fetch. Classic market's a funny thing. If you play in the classic car market, you're far more adept at it than we are. But again, just because it's old doesn't make it valuable, but sometimes newer cars that you don't think are valuable because of their rarity and so on and so forth. There's some gems in there, and there's some stuff you mentioned that I'm sort of thinking, I can't see people flocking to them either.
I don't actually think it's live yet, so I guess you have to wait later on today. I'm going to go and put the link to the auctions in the comments for anyone who is watching. Unfortunately, on LinkedIn, you have to go and search for yourself.
Well, it's not Kim.com's car, so he's still here, isn't he?
Now, MG wants to create a charging network at New Zealand hotels, and I think this should be lauded. MG Motors has confirmed it will roll out an electric vehicle charging network scheme for hotels around the country following the successful introduction of the scheme to Australia. Hotels dotted around New Zealand have the chance to opt into the scheme, which MG calls the MG Charge Hub Subsidy Program. The program offers hotel owners one of two possible fitted charging units, a 7 kilowatt single phase or 11 kilowatt three phase charger at a heavily subsidized cost. Why is this a big deal? This is a big deal because overnight charging on road trips makes such a massive, massive difference to doing miles in electric cars, particularly with a good charger. I generally now, people know, do most of my road trips in electric vehicles, and I will virtually only book accommodation that has charging. And while there is plenty of accommodation with charging out there, it is by and large Tesla charging. This move is great. It's great for all brands, and I think that, look, the more brands that do it, the more places they're going to have multiple chargers, the better for everyone. It reduces congestion on the DC charging network, and it just makes for a way better experience for the users of vehicles, the buyers of vehicles. So, good work, MG. Not sure what more needs to be said. It's just
here's a question,
smart
Richard.
way of doing business.
So here's a question from a business perspective: are they going to incentivize MG owners for using the network? So on one hand, you could argue and say that they're doing this just to try and promote general EV usage and uptake through the ability now to use a vehicle around the country. Or are they going to, a bit like Tesla did in the early stages, where you've got a Tesla dedicated network, somehow there's incentivization for MG owners to charge, whether it's, I don't know what sort of subsidies you could put in place or what sort of incentivization, but is it going to be genuinely just all-in EV owners, or is there going to be some sort of kickback to MGs? Because you'd think that'd be a good thing to do, wouldn't it?
Well, I don't think these chargers are free to use. It's just a case of getting them out there. I think this project has largely been driven out of Australia, where the charging network is just a pile of junk. It's virtually non-existent in comparison to New Zealand.
Yeah, it is.
And road tripping in an MGZS in Australia is not easy compared to what it is here. And so you need to overnight charge over there to do any meaningful mileage. Here you can get away with it. But I think that's what it is. But I still think it's a great thing, and it's an idea that Tesla had and Tesla ran with first. And it's good to see other brands catching up. It's just it's great for the accommodation owners. I mean, look, once they realize that EV owners literally will go and search for going to places with a plug.
There's a funny story I can tell on behalf of you, Richard, because you know the story, you might remember it, about how the Tesla charging network worked. Back in 2015, you and I were road tripping across the backwaters of Western and Southwestern America in a rental Camaro convertible. And we called into Ely, Nevada. If you get your road atlas out and have a look, it's in the middle of absolutely nothing. It's on the I-80 corridor. It's through the upper end of the Nevada Great Basin Desert. Ely is a mining town. And as somebody pointed out, Ely's basically good for petrol station, mining, and whores in no particular order, because it's also legal for prostitution. And there is it was a charging network. The only place we saw charging, Tesla had charging at the Denny's up off the I-80, sitting up against the hill. We went there for breakfast, I think, that morning.
Yes.
And there was a highly, highly disaffected, clearly upper-end San Francisco family on a road trip across America with the equally disaffected and unimpressed children having to pour out of the car while it charged and go to a Denny's. And then you could just about see them creeping and saying, "Is there a gluten-free menu? Have you got chamomile tea?" And the Denny's waitress could just see coming, you could see this is going to be fun to watch. And so it put people in these really unusual places to charge and therefore go and get breakfast or dinner or a cup of chamomile tea But it was genius on Tesla's behalf. And on behalf of the places where they had those chargers installed, like the Denny's in Ely, Nevada, it was business. So it was a win-win. We saw that in action.
Yeah, yeah. And look, you've traveled with me in EVs. I book where the charge. And
Yeah,
and when we did that trip recently in the EV Ute and the van, it was so good for the van, at least. Unfortunately, not for the Ute because timing, long story. Read about it next week in EVs and beyond.
There, Richard.
For you to leave with that van at 100% charge in the morning, it just makes sense. Same with the Zoe was a little harder. When we drove from, Graham and I drove from Bluff to Auckland in a Renault Zoe, where possible we would try and charge overnight. I think we managed it once. Yeah.
In
Wellington.
Friends Joseph, I think.
Friends Joseph, I DC charged that night and then parked.
Oh, that's right.
Because the charger was packed in. They had a charger, but it was packed in by the mini conference.
Oh, that's right, the cavalcade of minis. So it can be done. We proved it could be done.
Can be done. And in Wellington, we DC charged overnight. It makes such a big difference because, of course, you get that extra 20% at the top that you never really get back on a road trip when you're DC charging. But anyway, so it's a good thing. I want to see more of it. So look, I think that's probably enough for today. 26 minutes on our 10-minute recording. Thank you again, Matthew and Graham. Now, actually, before we go, Matthew, I have something. You're my resident motorsport fan.
Oh, no.
I have an idea. So it's only going to take a minute.
Uh-oh. Be prepared.
MG, well, we're speaking of MG, if you're listening. I'm currently driving the amazing vehicle it is, the MG3.
Yes.
So this was up until recently with the subsidy, before the subsidies came, New Zealand's cheapest car. I think it's about 20 grand drive away, all in, kind of good. It's not a bad wee little bus. It steers okay, it drives okay, it's a bit thirsty, fine. But I had a thought, and that is they should bring back cheap, one-make car racing. This thing feels like
soccer on the field in cars.
This thing feels like what a Mini would have been if BMW had never taken over and the English had kept on running it. And
so crap.
Is that a compliment?
No, it's not crap.
Well, that's what they were.
But if you can, I reckon if they could get even if they were left-hand drive, a whole pile of cheap, stripped-out ones out of China, slap a roll page in them, slap some firmer suspension in them, and some decent brake pads in them. You can put them on the road on the track as a fully ready-to-go race car for like 25k. One make series, lots of rubbing. Put some young drivers in them. Maybe do it Australasian. MG might want to throw some money in it. And going. Would you watch that, Matthew? Would you watch a bunch of young people and old people with money running up against each other in MG3s?
I mean, I'd be swayed by the lure of, say, maybe a media entry that might sway my opinion on the matter. It's funny.
What about an Auto Media Group entry? I mean, just saying.
Not all of us in the car at the same time would be pretty bad for ballast. New Zealand had a good time with the Suzuki series that we used to do, the Suzuki Swift Sports, and the Sanyong series, for all of the, I guess, cynicism from certain people in the build-up. They had a mega list of cars. Like they had like 40 or something entries at their peak.
Yep.
So it could work. I mean, it's worked before, and I guess the way to think about it is that once the car's out of date or whatever, we shouldn't be surprised if MG just flies the coop and lets it be. But there's probably a market for it, especially if they could keep the price down.
Yeah, and I think MG wants to push their brand out here, particularly here in Australia. So, there potentially is that. I think there's an opportunity. And look, I described this car I described it to my wife this morning as feels like a 5-year-old Suzuki Swift. And that's not bad. That's not a bad thing of saying. It's that's the car it feels like, and I think it would make a great little one-make car, and the dollars just make so much sense. So
there's no such thing as a $25,000 entry-level race car. And you saw that. I had friends that raced in the Sanyong series, and $25,000, let's say, as a ticket, and then it's plus all the stuff you're not supposed to do, but all the stuff you finesse. There's no such thing as a $25,000 race series.
I don't know.
Well,
I think you could come up with a very tight formula, and get probably, as I said, left-hand drive, strip it, partially built cars out of China that are never set for the road, and I think you could do it. I reckon you can do it.
Every supplier has to
push the idea. We'll put a team together. What do you reckon? I'll brush off my rusty skills.
So $20,000 car, take out the airbags, take out 4 of the seats, take out the interior except for a little dash screen, and slap a roll cage in it, brakes, and some shocks. I think that's all you do. You even put it on the standard control road tires. I think that's the key thing.
Okay,
anyway.
Motorsport Top Tips and Richard for a Friday.
Yep. Anyway, that is half an hour. Let's run those credits, and we will catch everyone next week.
Have a great week, guys and girls, and everyone.